and he'll say, this is not communism, this is humanism. And there's absolute freedom of speech in Cuba. Everybody's absolutely free to speak in Cuba. And all the money we gather here is for the people. You know, it would be kind of funny if it wasn't so true. But then came the key. Oh, thank you. Whiskey?
Rum.
I needed that. The key speech, early on, and one of the reasons that I'm still talking today, in one of his key speeches, he said, "Armas para qué?" Weapons, what for? Turn in your weapons. This, my people, is a peaceful and above all humanistic revolution. We will never need to use force because we will always see that the most peaceful means be used to avoid that one drop of Cuban blood be shed. Beautiful speech. And the next day, whatever weapons there were in the country were turned in. The next day after that, well, let me read from my book. Once again, and more so than ever before, the people prostrated themselves, trusting and defenseless before the gods of demagoguery and doublespeak. In perpetually naive hope and faith, they placed themselves once again at the mercy of their leaders' good intentions, and their leaders, who had no good intentions, were now firmly into power. This weapons speech was followed by a rapid succession of key communists being assigned to key positions in the government, new generals in the army, as a matter of fact, a new revolutionary force to replace much of the army. Confiscation began. The property, first of all, of people from the old regime, but then anybody that was rich, all the foreigners, that started. Banks and other financial institutions were intervened by the government. Money. People were holding on to their money. They got nervous. And they were holding on to their Cuban pesos. Oh, they were brilliant. They came out and said, well, you know, actually, after a certain date, your Cuban pesos aren't going to be worth anything anymore, so you got to turn them into the bank, but no problem, tit for tat, you turn in your Cuban pesos, we'll give you the new revolutionary peso. Well, they did that, and whereas the Cuban peso was par with the American dollar, the new revolutionary peso was worth 8.5 cents. But by then it was a little too late. The civic community came into place. What is a civic community? At first it was an excuse because there was going to be an imminent American invasion. So we had to unite and protect against this invasion that was supposed to be coming, and obviously never did. What really it became is the key to the control. These guys put Nazi Germany to shame. Every block in Cuba is considered a civic block. On each block, there's one person in charge of reporting to an official in the government everything that's going on every week. On that same block, there's 2 or 3 people incognito that are in charge of reporting to the official and the government. Then each house has to report on its neighbors. And you better report, because if your neighbor got in trouble and you didn't report on them, you're in trouble too. Then within each house, each member of the family is supposed to report on the other members. And this goes all the way down to children of school ages, where one day, unannounced, the child may bring a little friend home from school, and the little friend is there to report. And here, not even a puberty age, the kid is already set out to report on the families. At a certain time and place, the family may get a questionnaire all at the same time. The child in school, the parents, one at work, one at home, whatever. And especially if they just got together the week before, they ask them, you know, hey, what did you do last week? Does your dad have any guns lying around the house? Does your uncle like Fidel Castro? And those reports better jive, or people are going to be in trouble. In spite of this, incidentally, because there's a pretty strong passive resistance movement in Cuba right now. In spite of this, people were still helping each other in spite of this terror. And it goes on and on. Like I say, I talk all night about this. You can't listen all night because you got things to do. People were helping each other. And so then they came out with a very neat trick. Of course, to help each other is a counter-revolutionary act. Any counter-revolutionary act is punishable by death. So now, in the middle of the night, you have somebody knocking on the door and saying, open up, they're going to kill me. They're after me. Well, if you open up, he may be a double agent, or she, and that's it. If you don't, you may always have it on your conscience that you allowed an innocent person to die. You have to become part of the system. I mean, this really brings you in. Jump around a little bit. I just at least give you the idea of how this came into place. It's so important when I see and hear, and this is why I help, to stay in the streets. We feared. We were so busy fighting each other and trying to elbow each other out back home that we did not take over the streets. And one of the key things that happened in Cuba was you had bands of pro-Castro thugs running around intimidating people, beating them up. If somebody got arrested, it was usually the person got beat up, and they got beat up some more later on. But once they did that, once they controlled the economy, once they controlled the people, once they controlled to a great extent the kids in school, Castro was able to come out and brag. He said, all the ideas I have today, I had the 1st of January of 1959. We simply had to use scientific socialism. Remember that word. But now I can say it with pride. I'm a Marxist-Leninist, and I will be a Marxist-Leninist until the day that I die. That was a time for Cuban people to get out and protest. But like I said, they didn't. And so what ended up happening in Cuba, long story short, is that instead of the people being allowed to rise to a better standard of life, as would be their will and their way, the two higher classes were squashed into the level of the lowest, creating an impoverished society dominated by a rich and powerful elite. They call it communism, they call it socialism. Way back then, they even called it feudalism, because that's basically what it was. I hear many people say that it can't happen here. We have, we have our Constitution, we have our system of rights, our checks and balances, we have a very powerful military, we have a firm alliance to our values and institutes. You know, it's ironic, we said the same thing to Hungarians in 1956 that came to Cuba, fresh out of the Hungarian Revolution and the bloody oppression of the Russians. there to that revolution. And we said, oh, you're under stress. You're a little mistaken. You're a little paranoid. You might even be a little crazy. I'm gonna cut it short so we can get into some questions that you might have. And if you guys have any comments, you can. But I want to just go back to the thugs in the street concept. In your last elections, the Tea Party made a very bad mistake. It was a normal mistake, but they paid dearly for it. They were trying to get people elected to office, and they got away from the streets and started gearing to that. They should not have done that. They should have done both. And because of that, what happened? You had Occupy taking over cities, blocking the docks. You had the labor unions taking over the capital of what, Wisconsin, is it? You had, do you one better, you had people having to go to voting booths with a mural of Obama looking down on them. You had the Republican poll watchers being physically kicked out and replaced by Democratic poll watchers. And where were we? Where was the counter to this in the streets? So what happened? The average Joe Blow that doesn't know what's really happening, all he or she saw on TV was a left that was pretty well organized, that was very dedicated, that was not afraid of anything. I didn't see anything else. No wonder we lost the elections. You know, so if we don't get back out and start continuing to get involved more and more, we're going to be in trouble. But let me tell you what we're looking at. We're looking at, in the next couple of years, these movements from their side becoming more and more violent. We're looking at more intimidation. And finally, if we're not very, very careful, we're looking at what happened back in my country, the bombs. There came a time in late 1959 when Cubans would not go to a movie theater, they wouldn't go to a ball game, they wouldn't go to a boxing match because of the fear of the hidden bombs. This is what you may be looking at. This is why you've got to continue being dedicated, being active, and never let your guard down. This is why I can't quit. At my age, I sure can think of a lot of other things I'd rather be doing right now than talking to you guys tonight. But I see a lot of faces out here that are probably with me. We can't. We have got to, continue this fight. I'm going to leave it there because I have a gung-ho ending. But what I think I'll do is turn this over to you, finish it, and then if somebody has some questions, if you want to stay behind, I'll be here. If not, then no problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.